In this video, we're actually going to do some problems related to direct proportion. So we're going to do 3 quick examples now. Right, so here's a simple question. We are told that this variable p and this variable q are directly proportional to one another. Now, first of all, this yellow box could be summarized in a simple notation. It could be written like this. So that yellow box is this here. So the way a mathematician would read this is P is directly proportional to Q. This symbol means it's kind of a proportional symbol, that this variable is connected to this one, but because these two variables are written in this particular way, that means they are directly proportional to one another. That means whatever the variable Q measures, whatever it is, if Q goes up, the P goes up, and if Q goes down, then Q goes down. So these two variables are connected in this direct way. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to work out a formula that connects P and Q together. Now, whenever you have this direct proportion and you see this kind of notation, you should really always write, if you don't see that notation, you should always write this. What that means is there is a formula that connects these two equations together. Sorry, these two variables together. And that formula must look like this. It must be P is equal to something times Q. Now, in our last video, when we looked at like the price to carpet that floor or to fill that tank, that K was the price per like a centimeter cubed or something like that. But we're not really talking about like anything real life here. We're just talking about these two variables here. So whenever you have this scenario that P is directly proportional to Q, that means that the formula must look like this. That connects the two variables together. That means this variable on the left must equal some number, which we don't know yet, times the other variable. Okay. Now, P and Q can be any variable, but that K is the proportional amount that connects them both together. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to actually work out what the actual formula is. This is a template for the formula. So this is what the formula is going to look like. P is going to equal some number, which we need to find, this number K. We need to find that number, times Q. Now, in this green box, we have some information that tells us something about P and Q, which is going to help us work out this K here. And it says when P is 7, Q is 4. If we put P and Q into this formula, and replace them with the numbers we're told here, so P is 7, and that equals something we don't know, times Q, which is 4. So that means that K value must equal, if we rearrange this formula, so it's K times 4, so divide both sides by 4. 7 divided by 4 is 1.75. So that K value, the proportional amount, is 1.75. So you can think about the formula now is P is equal to 1.75 times Q. This is the formula that connects these two variables together. Now, you can think about it in this way, for example. You can think about it in this way. You can think about, like, let's say P is how many pounds you can get. And Q is, like, for example, I don't know, let's say how many euros or something like that. Yeah, or dollars or euros or something like that. So this is what you need to multiply one variable by. So this number here is what you need to multiply Q by in order to get P. But if you look at the formula, what it means by directly proportional is that if Q is very large, P is very large in return. If Q is very small, Q is very small in return. And the proportional thing is what this K is. This is the proportional value that connects P and Q together. This is the proportion that P is related to Q. Okay, so first of all, kind of that procedure, this is the kind of, if you want to think about it in steps. First of all, when you see this yellow box, always write this. Then the formula is that this is equal to something times Q. Okay, what I do is I replace that symbol, that alpha symbol, with equals K, and then I just, whatever that is, I'll write that next to it. So P is equal to some number times Q, K times Q. Then you use this box to work out what that number is, and then once you worked out that number, you actually write down what the formula is. So this is the formula that connects P and Q together. That means you can now use that formula to work out what P is if you know Q. So for example, if Q is 10, P would have to be 1.75 times 10, which would be 17.5, sorry. Or if you know what P is, then you can work out Q because you have a formula that connects them. Right, let's look at another example, slightly harder one. Right, this time round, it says P, so P is directly proportional, so I'm going to put that symbol, that alpha symbol, to the square root of Q. So not Q, but the square root of Q. So I'm going to write the square root of Q like this. So that means that these two variables are connected, but the way they are connected is that P is connected to the square root of this other variable. So not Q itself, but the square root of that number. But it's still directly connected. So that means if whatever Q is, if it goes up, P goes up in return. If it goes down, P goes down in return. But that means that P is equal to some number times the square root of Q. So what I literally do is I replace that alpha symbol with equals something times the other variable. So this is what the formula is going to look like that connects these two variables together. So this is the formula that connects these two variables together. So P is equal to something times the square root of Q. Now we need some information in order to work out that proportional value. So K is the proportional part that tells you what you need to do to Q to get to P. And we need some information. So here's the information in the green box. P is 10, Q is 16. So let's put those two numbers in P and Q. So P is 10 and Q is 16, but we have to write the square root of 16 because remember, P is directly proportional to the square root of Q. So we have to write the square root of Q, so we have to write the square root of 16. And then rearrange that formula to work out K. That's 10 divided by the square root of 16, or 10 divided by 4, which is 2.5. So now this is K is 2.5. Now this is the proportional amount that connects P and Q together. So P must equal 2.5 times the square root of Q. This is the complete formula. You can think about that 2.5 as like the price per like a square centimeter or whatever like that. In that last video we talked about like carpeting that floor or, you know, filling that tank with fuel. This is the price per like 1 unit. So you can think about that as that way. Right, but this is the complete formula. So just to summarize, this is the description of how the two variables are connected. This is what the formula is going to look like. And then this is the actual formula. So now we can use the formula to work out what P is. So it says find P when Q is 90.25. So that means all we need to do is put Q into our complete formula. So P is equal to 2.5 times the square root of 90.25. So we're going to work that out now. And that comes to 23.75. So that's what P is when Q is that. Because we have a formula that helps us work out one variable if we know the other one. But that's how you do that particular question. Okay. Well, let's just do one more. Let's do one like sort of like a example that's kind of like a bit more kind of related to something anyway. That's more kind of realistic, but this is kind of like a made up example. Right. In this question, we're told the time it takes, the time taken to cook a meal is directly proportional to the number of people you are cooking for. Right. So let's say T is time, which is measured in minutes, and P is the number of people. So we're told that T is directly proportional to P. So however many people you're cooking for, so the more people you cook for, the more time it would take. The less people you cook for, the less time it would take. So that must mean the time it takes to cook a meal must equal something times however many people you're cooking for, so something times P. Now in this table, we're given some data. We're given a lot of data for the time it takes to cook for so many people. So the time it takes to cook for 4 people is 60 minutes, 5 people, 75, 6, 90, and so on. Now, I'm just going to use one of them. I'm going to use the first kind of column to work out a formula for how T and P are connected. And I'm just going to replace, so remember you always write this T equals something times the other variable. So T is 60 and the number of people is 4, so it's going to be something times 4. So if I rearrange this formula, K is going to be 60 divided by 4, which is 15. Now you can think about this in a logical way. That 15 represents it's the proportional factor that connects P and Q together, but it's how many minutes it takes to cook for one person. Right? So if you look at it logically, look, you've got 10 people. 10 times 15 is 150 minutes. That's how long it would take to cook for 10 people. But we have a formula now that connects T and P together. T is equal to 15 times P, or 15P. So this is the formula. So this is a description of how the two variables are connected. Okay, so this is how the two variables are connected, and this is the actual formula that tells you how the two variables are connected together. So that means we can work out this question here. So if you're cooking for 70 people, the time it would take would be T equals 15 times 70, because you can think about it as 15 minutes per every person. So that works out to 1050 minutes. Now you can always work out how many hours that is. It's about 17.5 hours, I think. But that's how many minutes it would take to cook for 70 people. All right. Okay, so just before you kind of go and do some questions on this, what you should do is, let's do that again. Try these two questions here, A and B. So what I want you to do is pause the video, try these two questions here, and then unpause the video, and I'm just going to reveal the answer. So pause the video right now. So these are the answers, and I hope you got them right. So R is equal to 0.75 times Q, and R equals 12.5 for part B. And in this question, B is equal to 5 times the square root of A. And by the way, sorry, that was a mistake. That was supposed to be an A. So when A is 25, B is also 25. But this is the formula that connects the two variables together. Right, in the last video, I talk about graphs related to these two, this topic. So you need to watch the last video as well. Thank you for watching this.